Murray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I would like to thank the Secretary of State for advance notice of his statement, indeed coming to the House yesterday to indicate he would be making this statement today. And I'd also like to begin by welcoming unequivocally the news that an agreement has been reached on the fiscal framework. And I'd also like to echo the thanks to both governments, the Deputy First Minister, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury who is in his place, and of course indeed the Secretary of State himself for working so hard to secure this historic deal. Of course, the officials of both governments, and we all know, Mr Speaker, those are the people who do the real work in these negotiations, and our heartfelt thanks go out to them. Yesterday's agreement marks the removal of the final obstacle to the transfer of significant and substantial powers to Scotland. And as Lord Smith has said himself, and I quote, "The agreement sees the recommendations of the Smith Commission delivered in full." Importantly, the vow stipulated clearly that the Barnett formula should remain as the key mechanism for calculating Scotland's budget. That has now been agreed and Barnett has been secured. I note the Secretary of State's commitment to publishing details of the agreement by the end of this week, and I welcome that commitment, but can the Secretary of State indicate if this House will have time to scrutinise the agreement in detail? I have been saying in this House for some time that greater transparency is required in the way these deals are negotiated. What this process has highlighted is that future intergovernmental relationships must be improved to make these powers work for Scotland. Lord Smith's recommendations that both governments need to work together to create a more productive, robust, visible and transparent relationship, and that the Joint Ministerial Committee must be reformed as a matter of urgency, echo in this process. And can the Secretary of State confirm this will be done? We all know that the major stumbling block was the indexation method used for the block grant adjustment. Under the compromise reached, there will be a 5-year transitional period, as the Secretary of State has said, which will cover a full term of the next Scottish Parliament. Towards the end of this period, an independent review and recommendation will be published that will form the basis of a more permanent solution. When he gave evidence to the Scottish Parliament's Devolution Committee last night, the Secretary of State suggested that the period between the review being published and the transitional period ending at the end of March 2022 could be as little as just 12 weeks. If no agreement is reached, what happens then? In terms of the transitional period itself, it is my understanding that the Scottish Fiscal Commission will carry out the necessary forecasts for Scottish GDP and indeed tax revenues. Can the Secretary of State confirm that, under the terms of the fiscal framework negotiations, these forecasts will be fully independent of the Scottish Government, because last week the Scottish Finance Committee voted against allowing for this very independence? Also, there seems to be some confusion over the block grant adjustment during this transitional period to 2022. The First Minister said it would be done according to the Treasury's favoured method, but with the Scottish Government's favoured outcome. Can the Secretary of State confirm what the actual method will be? Will it be the catchy-named tax capacity adjusted levels deduction, which I understand was the Chief Secretary to the Treasury's latest offer? Further clarity is also needed on the timeframe for the devolution of powers. The Secretary of State has said that the new income tax powers will be available by April 2017. The Deputy First Minister has said he does not agree that that timeframe is realistic. Is the Secretary of State able to confirm that the new tax powers will be transferred by April 2017? Today, the Scottish Government is passing the Scottish budget. 12 months from now, at the next Scottish budget, we want them to be having full control of income tax, air passenger duty and the deployment of 50% of Scotland's VAT revenues. We also want to have the considerable powers over welfare, which will allow us to design a new social security system for Scotland. Moving on to the review, I welcome this and welcome that it will be fully independent. I have stated several times that impartial oversight and, if necessary, arbitration should be an established part of intergovernmental relations. Can the Secretary of State tell us how the review body will be chosen and confirm that it will be done in the spirit of consensus with the full agreement of both governments? Can he also tell us to what extent the recommendations of the review will influence the decision taken on the long-term solution for block grant adjustment? Mr Speaker, I would like to close by welcoming once again the agreement that has been reached. Today marks a historic date in Scotland's devolution journey, the creation of one of the most powerful devolved parliaments in the world. The promises made to Scotland in 2014 have been met, the Smith Agreement implemented, Barnett protected, powers transferred, the vow delivered. Scottish politics will never be the same again thanks to these new powers. We have entered a new and exciting era of devolution. What an opportunity to transform Scotland for everyone, an opportunity that indeed my party will grasp with both hands.